Yeah, I probably should have wore a helmet for that. Here's your look at the NECA toys, E.T. the Extra-Terrestrial, E.T. and Elliott with bicycle. Bring the magic and excitement of E.T. the Extra-Terrestrial into your world. As your friendship with E.T. grows, relive all his earthly encounters, or look to the stars and create your own unforgettable interactive adventures. With E.T., the possibilities are endless. Just before we get this alien tyke home on our bike, I'd like to thank the folks over at NECA Toys that did provide this sample of the E.T. the Extra-Terrestrial Elliott and E.T. We got to look at this review. E.T. and Elliott, for all intents and purposes, are kind of built to the bike. You can't have them as freestanding figures. With that being said, though, let's grab the tape measure and just see how big this is. We're also going to bring in an E.T. for comparison, so stay tuned for that. In the meantime, though, the bike from one wheel to the other, or I guess technically we should say that E.T. is a little longer than that, or sticks out a little further. With that in mind, the total bike is about 5.5 inches in length, or it's going to be about, I would say, 13.5 centimeters long. As for its height, though, taking it right to the very top of this, in this case, Elliott's head, the total release of Elliott and E.T., again, all as one piece, you're looking at the set being 5 inches in height, or in this case, I would say 12.5 centimeters tall. I think really with this release, NECA's plan was to put this out as a diorama, not necessarily something that was really supposed to be ever scaled with any of their other E.T. figures. And the reasoning why I say that, I'm going to move over Elliott and E.T. with bike. I'm going to bring in the deluxe, ultimate deluxe version of E.T. And you can clearly see E.T. in the basket, which technically can be removed. I did say earlier that it really is one package deal, but if you really want to remove E.T., it's really essentially just his body all kind of compact together. And when you put them next to a regular E.T., clearly the design of having these two scaled in one another isn't going to happen. The E.T. that comes included inside the bike basket is way too small to scale appropriately with the other Ultimate E.T. releases. The bike really does have two ways to be displayed. You can have it like this on your shelf. That does require, though, the clear acrylic stands that actually attach to the underside of the bike wheels, but you can actually have Elliott and E.T. just on your shelf like this. If, though, you have the space available, as you'll see in a second, I'm going to bring in the diorama of the moonscape. You can actually have, like in the film, Elliott and E.T. floating in front of the moon. I think that's awesome. But let's not get ahead of ourselves, though. I wanted to show you the things that come included with this if you're just looking to have this on your shelf as you see right now. And in order to accommodate that appropriately, NECA include these two acrylic stands. You can see that they're sort of half moon shaped, slightly concaved, and they actually fit on top of the tires. Because really without that, if you were just to remove this on its own and have it standing on its own, it's just no way you'd be able to balance the bike. So I would certainly say don't lose these, whatever you do. Like I said, they're just frictioned attached, so you just fit them on top of the wheels, not drop E.T. in the process. And then once you have those attached, yeah, you can then easily display the bike. Although with the wheels always spinning, you're going to have a problem with, of course, getting that. But once you got that all straight, and you get the stand sort of in the middle, you can easily have the bike standing on its own. Another neat thing that NECA included with this, and I really wasn't expecting them to include anything like this, because really, when you have the diorama of the moon and you already have E.T., Elliott, and the bike, it really didn't even need the next thing. And yet, they include sort of a motorized wheel. I'm going to just move these carefully out of the way because I'm going to need those in a second. What you can do, I'm just going to move Elliott just to the side here for 1 second. With this, you're essentially getting yourself a wind-up, kind of like those pull-back cars. You just pull it back, and it zips forward. It zips, granted, further, a lot easier when you have it on a smooth surface, but you just pull it back and then it zips across the floor. It just has two tires on both sides, and when again you pull it back, the tires then spin forward. And it doesn't always do the greatest of jobs, but you can see how that spins on its own. But there's a little connecting peg right on the very top of it. We're going to go ahead and take Elliott. We're just going to remove these stands because we don't need them right now. And if you look on the bottom of the base, on the bottom of the bike, I should say, in between the pedals, you'll see there's a hole right there. You then take this and you just plug this in like that. And not only do you have a stand for Elliott, but you can also pull this back and mostly it should zip forward. Again, I'm doing this on a harder, coarser surface, so it's not going to do an easy enough job of actually being able to zip across the floor. I've done this actually on just a smooth surface floor, and it does actually gain some momentum and actually does move, not a lot, but it moves just a little bit. We don't tend to get too many gimmicks like this when it comes to NECA. Oh, and also as well, there's a little kind of rampway here where the front of the tire sort of rests against it, and it gives a little, again, little bit of stability. So really, for all intents and purposes, if you happen to, say, lose these stands, I don't want to think that you would, you at least have this. You can have that displayed with Elliott instead. Odd to see a gimmick included with a NECA release, because again, they always are the ones that kind of do the high realistic collectibles and figures. To throw in a gimmick seems a bit strange, but it's kind of interesting the fact that they would have thrown that in there. Okay, so let's go ahead and just detach this carefully, of course. And we're going to remove that to the side. One thing I would note about the bike is that the front half of the bike does come off quite frequently from the rest of the main body. It just essentially tabs in underneath. But then when you've got the weight of essentially ET inside the basket, a lot of times if you are, say, picking up the bike, for example, you'll find the front half of the bike will usually fall off. It's actually a good thing that it's a separate piece, because when we eventually attach it onto the moon, it's a lot easier, in fact, that you don't have ET in the front of it adding some unnecessary weight. It's kind of easier to kind of get in there. So let's look at the component pieces first. Obviously, you've got yourself the main bike, which has the basket here in the front. And then inside the basket, I just prop this down here for a second. Inside the basket, of course, we've already had a look at ET. Now, establishing already the obvious, this ET is not meant to be scaled with the normal ultimate ETs that we've already had a look at here. But it's a nice wrapped up little version of ET. I can't even imagine how his body sort of all fits in like this, but it's a really nice detailed figure. It has no articulation to speak of. It almost feels as if you'd be able to go in and move the head around, as there seems to be just a little bit of give. And the actual top hood of the blanket is a little more of a softer plastic, but the paint's really good on this one for a slightly smaller version of ET. And again, it does fit inside the basket, so you're just going to put it inside like that. And it actually fits pretty good. It's pretty secure. I mean, obviously, you wouldn't want to be tipping this upside down all the time, but it does hold ET really well in the basket. Then for Elliott. Now, Elliott really can't be removed from the bike. He does feel like he could be a separate figure, but there's no articulation to start, obviously, in his arms, nor in his legs. And again, he's really just designed to be always in a staction pose of being squat like this, sitting on top of a bike. So if you're looking to get yourself an Elliott, I hope that at some point we do get ourselves a standalone Elliott. But this is the best that we have right now. And, you know, to be all honest and fair, it's a really good likeness of Elliott. You can see, again, in this case, he's actually got his hood on. But the paint is really good, really well handled here from NECA. The head articulation pretty much represents the only articulation that's here on Elliott. It's on a ball joint, so at least you can have the head looking up, looking down, and back and forth. But it's a really well-painted figure, too, all the way down to his dirtier-looking sneakers. The front tire and back tire and front tire do spin, and you can also, again, rotate this back and forth. There is no articulation that I can see, at least on the pedals, but at least, again, the tires do rotate, so that's a nice touch. Just, again, like, you're always going to want to pop this back into place. So let's go ahead. I'm just going to put these back on the stands here. Do it on the other side of here as well. And we're going to put Elliott down here just for 1 second, because not only did I want to bring the pegs back in, the other accessories that come included with the figure, but I also want to bring in the moon. I want to show you guys what that looks like too. Bringing in now the moon diorama and pulling the camera back so it would be a little easier to be able to show you guys everything that's going on. NECA includes with Elliott and ET this sort of tri-standing cardboard standee. The thing I like about it, first of all, is the quality of the material that they've used. It's not a very thin cardboard. You can see it's also got sort of a laminated surface across this. There really was no assembly either when you got this out of the box. Essentially what it is it's folded up like this. Pretty compact, easy to store. And when you open this up, there is a secondary card piece you can see right around here, and that bridges sort of the two halves together. Again, everything is already assembled, so you don't have to worry about anything. And then you've got yourself not only the image of Amblin, but you've also got where, Elliott and ET are going to be floating in front of it. You probably can already see, too, there's 2 holes here on the front. Those 2 holes will correspond with 2 slotted pegs that are actually going to slide inside of here. Before we actually do that, though, I did want to show you guys what the moonscape looks like. Really nice, bright blue setting here. Of course, you got some very bright stars there in the background. In the foreground, however, though, you have the silhouetted trees, exactly like the way it looks in the movie. If only I could offer up any little bit of criticism. While I do like that everything is sort of compact and everything's ready to go when you get it out of the box, When you then get these pieces, you have to kind of fish your hands in there to feed it through to attach then Elliott onto the back card. And because there's not a lot of space, especially if you got big hands, I don't have big hands, but if you have bigger hands, you'd have a harder time to get your hands in there. There's also no instructions that NECA included with this release either, so you have to kind of figure it out yourself. But what we're going to do is we're going to take then these holes, and what I'm going to do is you get 2 of these. They're sort of like thumbtacks made of clear acrylic plastic. You have to kind of feed your hands through this, and then feed around to where you think the hole is, and then you just pop through the post, just like that. That one side's easier. This other side, for some reason, I had a harder time to get that in there. And because, again, everything's so close together, it's difficult. Let's just say it's difficult to get that. There we go. I have it all the way through. Okay, so once that's done, you get these C-clips. You get 2 of them. Very small, very easy to lose. So we're going to be very careful with that. To attach Elliott, now what you could honestly do is you could take the C-clips and you can already attach them onto the post, and then from there try to attach the bike onto that. But I find that's just more hassle. I found myself, at least, the easier method to do this was actually to attach the C-clips then onto the bike first, and then attach that to the back card. One thing I obviously will want to do is I'm going to want to remove this stand-in, the little stands that they include. So I'm going to just take those off. I'm also going to take ET off, because what you really don't want is you don't want this to flop around back and forth when you're trying to attach Elliott then onto the back card. So you got your card, and then you got Elliott. When you attach this, I find it's good to attach obviously on an angle, but it also helps to kind of figure out where you want to put this on the bike before you start trying to put this onto the card. Normally, you would think that this would be the best place right here, and for all intensive purposes, it should be the best place, but unfortunately, the brake line runs across the frame of the bike, and it ends up being thicker, so it's a harder time to actually get the C-clip on that. I find the C-clips were actually best to put right here, right above the pedal, and right here, where the thinner part of the frame is. With that in mind, let's try to do this on camera here. I'm going to take the C-clip, going to fit it around the bike frame, and you may think to yourself, how are you going to get that around his legs? You can still get it around his legs, don't worry. We're going to clip one right there, and we're going to then take the other one, and we're going to clip it right here. Now, if you have Elliott for yourself, you may found another way, a preferred way that you'd like to do this, but I found that these were the best places. Right here in the white frame, right here just above the pedal. And then from there, here comes the hardest part, just trying to line up everything. You normally can succeed at least in one of them. And we're just going to pop that in place, I should say, pop that in place. You're going to get one of them in, and this is always the one that's the easier of the two. And then you can do your best to try to get then the other one in there. And, again, you're going to have Elliott's leg in the way, but it's still enough. There's still enough clearance. There we go. You can get Elliott attached onto the bike. I honestly thought I was going to have to do this a couple more times. Then from there, you want to make sure Elliott's all the way on there. I think we're good. Then we're going to go ahead and attach ET. Now, with the posts being the length that they are, it allows just the right amount of clearance, there we go, that you can attach ET. And that's what it looks like. Does that not look really good? I mean, granted, it's going to take up a lot more real estate space than if you just simply had the bike displayed on your shelf for yourself. But if you have the space available, it makes for a fantastic looking diorama. And just again, to spin this from the side so you guys can see what it looks like. The back is also not finished in the sense that it's been printed on, but at least it gives you a fully high quality cardboard look to it. Again, just to pick this up carefully because I don't want to detach this. You can see again where I've attached it is right here and right here. You could try to attach it right here, but because of the brake line being in the way, I think you're going to have more hassle than anything else. It's not super secure, just because like the posts are going to wobble inside those little holes. But, I mean, again, if you're not going to be banging this at all, you could really have this guy on display, Elliott on display with ET. And it does make for one fantastic looking diorama. Even though essentially you are getting yourselves figures, even though Elliott really is more staction than anything else, and ET really is just more a tag-along accessory piece. It is one of those things I always hoped that NECA would be eventually releasing. Granted, it is smaller. It's not going to fit properly in scale with the regular ETs we've already had a look at. I think in order to accommodate a regular-sized ET, you would have to imagine how much bigger the bike would have to be and how much bigger Elliott would be. It's not to say that we aren't going to get ourselves a separate Elliott figure down the road, but this makes certainly for a really nice diorama. Not one that has to necessarily be displayed along with those ET figures, one that could easily be displayed on its own. You know, on the one hand, I am a little disappointed that unfortunately Elliott isn't in scale with the other earlier looked at ETs. It would have been perfect if we could have gotten ourselves an Elliott articulated figure, but even then, to get an Elliott on top of bike, if he was only scaled with ET, then you could at least put it with the rest of the collection and they would all sort of be in sync with one another. On the other hand, though, I think where this set sells the most is the presentation of it. The presentation of actually having E.T., Elliott, and the bike all attached so it looks like it's floating across the moon, I think justifies why it had to be the size that it is. First of all, the weight of having figures being larger in scale just to accommodate the sizing of what those already ETs established just would not work to be able to then attach this onto the frame. You're adding a lot of stress to those pegs and those clips that are attaching onto the bike that I would much rather the approach that NECA did do with this set, shrunk everything down so at least it accommodated a diorama rather than being an action figure. Not to say that still down the road we aren't going to get ourselves a fully articulated Elliott. I can only hope, if we already have an Elliott on a bike like this, that sooner or later, rather later, I'm sure, we're eventually going to get ourselves an articulated Elliott. Whether he's going to have this specific look with the hood, or if it's going to be an unhooded Elliott, I certainly hope that's something we're still going to be getting, but I am really happy with how this one turned out. The plastic also, I would say, on the clip seems strong enough that I have pretty good confidence in being able to put this on my shelf and know that the bike is always going to stay in place. I'm sure that's one question you guys have probably been asking yourselves as you're watching this, especially rotating on the turntable like this. Is this something that you think is going to last, always being up on a cardboard standee like this? I think, again, with the weight of the plastic that they used and being that it's a smaller version of Elliott and E.T., could never be able to do this with a larger scale version of them, but the sizing that they chose, I think I'm very confident being able to put this on the shelf and have E.T. and Elliott always floating in front of the moon. What do you guys think of this? Let me know down below in the comments section. Would you have preferred, is a good question to ask you guys, would you have preferred a full in-scale Elliott to go along with E.T., or would you rather have an E.T. and an Elliott where you can actually put it as a diorama like we have it right here? Let me know your thoughts down below in the comments section. And once again, a big thank you. Once again, a big thank you to the folks over at NECA Toys that did provide this sample of the E.T., the Extra-Terrestrial, Elliott, and E.T. We could have a look at this review. What I find somewhat funny, too, is as I'm wrapping up things in final looks here, I believe I did do a final looks. It might have been telepathic E.T., it might have been dress-up E.T., I don't even remember. But I did mention in that review, I really hope we did eventually get ourselves an Elliott with bike and E.T. in the basket. Sure enough, that set I think was already announced and already images shown of it online, and some of you guys were nice enough to actually let me know down below in the comments section. But there's definitely going to be a lot more videos, guys, coming your ways. If you guys certainly did enjoy this video, want to hit it with a like. If you guys are loving the content you guys are seeing and certainly on board to see more NECA reviews, if you haven't already done so, make sure you hit that subscribe button down below, and make sure if you haven't already done so that you're also turning on the bell notification so you are going to get those notifications. You are going to get those friendly pats on the shoulder by a friend you haven't seen in a very long time to tell you that there's new videos coming up on this guy's channel. And as always, guys, thanks for watching. See you guys next time.